Hey, everybody. My name is Brenda Myers, and I am so excited to be a part of the Hardwired to Lead conference. This is going to be an amazing conference. It's going to be from October 30th through November 11th, I believe. It's going to be filled with so much information that you guys can definitely take from and apply to your own life. I am here today to talk to you about failing forward. Now, I know that sounds kind of weird to talk about failing at all, but guess what? Failing is part of the process, it's part of the road to success. So, if you want to be successful, you got to get used to the fact that, some things might not go quite as planned. And you have to decide, am I going to just fail and quit, or am I going to fail and go forward? Let me start by giving you a little bit about story about myself. I am CEO and founder of Journey Insurance Solutions. I am the president of Entrepreneurs Academy 101, which is an online school for beginner and aspiring entrepreneurs. I'm an international best-selling author. I am a motivational speaker. And I want to share with you guys the process that I had to go through to get to where I am. Long story short, in 2009, there was the economic decline. Well, a lot of companies were laying off. They were downsizing, they were closing their doors, people were losing their jobs. So the rumor was going around that my law firm was going to be downsizing. I thought, well, I've been here a long time. I'm good at my job. Surely, I won't lose my job. So the first round of layoffs came and I didn't get laid off. But then there was a second round of layoffs that came. And when I was sitting at my desk, the phone rang, it was HR. I went to the meeting with the HR representative, and she was telling me all these great things like, oh, Brenda, you're so good at your job. And, we really, really like you. And, you know, the conversation turned to but. So we know that anything that anybody say prior to but is canceled out, right? The only thing I heard after but was, we got to let you go. Well, I don't recall being too upset about that. I recall thinking that, well, it's an opportunity to do something different. So what I did was I got my severance money. I took a little time off. I enjoyed, not having to punch a clock, anymore. And so I got a little reckless with some spending of my severance money. Well, I found myself in a position where my money was running out. I had no job and I had no plan. So I had to immediately stop and focus and pivot. So that's what I did. And this was in 2009 when this happened. So I had a friend that was in the insurance industry, and he said, "Well, why don't you come and work with us?" Well, I'm like, I don't want to sell insurance. But guess what? 13 years later, here I am with an insurance company that's doing really well. And, it's all because I got downsized from my job. So I said all that to say, what if I had not picked myself up, figured out a plan, and executed the plan? What if I had not done those things? Then I would have failed, right? I would have failed because I didn't do anything different. Had I not done anything different, that meant that I would never see the success that, I could have envisioned for myself. But I didn't do that. I didn't quit. I failed forward. So by opening my own insurance company, it led me to be able to become an entrepreneur, which means I work for myself. I own the company. I hire people to work with me. That makes me, an entrepreneur. So what I did was I created, well, first thing I did was I wrote a book about becoming an entrepreneur. The title of the book is Becoming an Entrepreneur, How to Start and Grow Your Business. So I said to myself, well, if I'm doing this, I can surely help more people. So let me just come up with another way to be able to reach, the masses of people. So what I did was I created an online school. It's called Entrepreneurs Academy 101. And what it does is it helps aspiring and beginner entrepreneurs on their path to becoming, successful business owners. So that was my way of saying, let me just pay it forward. Let me help someone else. Because guess what? Knowledge is not meant to just keep to yourself. If you're in a position where you can help other people, empower other people, women particularly, you know, that's what we're supposed to do. So that's what I did. And it didn't stop at that one book or that school. Now I have like 4 books under my belt, and you know, the school is doing well. So I feel really great about being empowered enough to give back and to help other aspiring business owners, business women just become successful. Because it's these tools that I'm giving you are the tools that you're going to need to, so the first thing is you have to adopt a can-do attitude. You have to have a can-do attitude because guess what? If you don't have a can-do attitude, you're already defeated. You're already defeated. So we have to adopt the mindset that, we can do it because guess what? If you don't believe you can do it, nobody else is going to believe you can do it, right? Bible says, get the vision and make it plain or something. Write the vision and make it plain. That's what it says. And that's what we should do. We should write down our vision, write down our dreams, and then we have to execute on them. Because guess what? If you have a dream or a vision and you're not executing on it, it's just dormant. It's just sitting there. You know, the world could be waiting for whatever the thing is that you want to invent or create, but you got to get over fear for one. You got to overcome fear. And then you just got to tell yourself, I can do it. Adopt that can do attitude and say, I can do it. I never would have thought that I would be, you know, successful businesswoman, public speaker, international bestselling author, recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award from the president, and so on and so forth. Sometimes setbacks are a setup for you know, something better. So something bad that happens to you it's not always the end of, something. It could be the beginning of something. When one door closes, another door opens. When one door closes, another door opens. But we have to have the courage to walk through that door. We have to have the courage to open that door. And it might seem like it might not want to open, but we got to kick it in. We got to kick it in because we're going to be successful, kicking and screaming, because if we're determined to do it, no closed door is going to stop us. No closed door is going to stop us from being who we're called to be. My very first time, sitting in my office, uh, way back in 2010, I was so empowered. I just felt like I did it. You know, I did it. A little girl from Mississippi with a dream. I was like, I can do this. This is doable. So, but what I had to do was I had to learn everything I needed to know about insurance. I had to learn how to be a boss. I had to learn about good customer service. How did I do all those things? How did I learn all of that? Well, I did my research. I did research on the industry. I did research on being a business owner, and I applied the things that I found, to my everyday routine of running my business. So, I mean, you can't just say one day I want to be an astronaut without going through the proper training to be an astronaut, right? Right. So everything that we do requires training, requires knowledge, requires research, requires time. You have to put the time into it if you want to get the best outcome because anybody can do anything really quickly. The quick is not always the way. The quickest way doesn't always lead to the road to success, right? We have to make sure that we are choosing the right path. If you're good at what you're good at, then do that. A lot of times people have opinions about, your dream or your vision. But if you're not in a position where you can just, hear them say what they want to say and just brush it off and keep going, then you're going to be in a little bit of trouble because guess what? We can't always take people's opinions about us to heart, or about what we're doing. to heart. People don't understand, they won't understand your vision. They've never, had your dream. God gave you the dream and the vision. So it's up to you to follow through with it, right? I mean, you can't tell someone, like I want to open up a bakery and they say, well, you're better at, doing hair. Why don't you open up a hair salon? No. Well, that's just their opinion. That's what they think you're better at. But you know what you're better at. You know what your dream is and what your vision is. So don't take anyone's opinion, as something negative. It's just their opinion. Don't let it hinder you from where you're headed. Because a lot of times people don't share our dreams and our vision. So we have to make sure that we're following the path that we're supposed to be on. Okay. And another thing I want to talk to you guys about is getting over fear. Fear can stop you from doing anything. We all have heard of the fear of the unknown, fear of, whatever the case might be, all of these phobias and whatever. But we have to develop in our minds that, we're stronger than fear. We're stronger than fear. The Bible says God didn't give us a spirit of fear. So why are we even, afraid? We have to trust and believe in ourselves that we can do it and that God is going to be, guiding us and pushing us to do what it is that we desire to do, right? So we have to stay on a path of positivity. Statistics show that positive people are way more successful in their personal lives and in their professional lives because they have a positive mindset. They have a positive energy about themselves. Have you ever walked in a room and somebody's energy was just so electric? You were just like, wow, who is that? Well, that person has a positive mindset. That person has a positive outlook on life. We have to develop a positive outlook on everything that we do. Because if we don't, we're subject to quit. Quitting is not the way to go. And quitting is not even an option. I tell myself every day that quitting is not an option. And I am going to be quite honest, being an entrepreneur, it's a tough career. It's a tough decision to make to, work for yourself because I mean, I know, some of you are used to the checks coming every Friday, every other Friday or whatever, but when you're an entrepreneur, you know, checks might be few and far between, but when they do come, it's like Christmas. It's like it's a really, really good feeling because guess what? That's your company. That is your company's check. That is the money that you've made your blood, sweat, and tears. That's generated this income. So it's something to be completely proud of. It is something to be completely proud of. Every time I get a deposit in my account from one of my businesses, I'm like, it's Christmas morning because it feels like that because I put my blood, sweat, and tears into, and made it happen. So I am encouraging, you guys to follow your dreams. I know we all have, something that we've thought about from when we were, little kids or something that we envisioned or something that we've come across in our adult lives. And, you want to make a career change. It's okay to do that. It's okay to do that. But my advice to you is to always do your research. Always do the research and find out how much time it's going to take to do it, how much it's going to cost you to do it, where you want to be located, if you have a brick and mortar, all of those things we have to find out. So, when you're filled with knowledge, you have more confidence about whatever it is you're trying to do. Because if you're getting ready to like do someone's hair and you haven't gone through the proper channels to learn the proper way to do it, you're probably going to be really nervous because guess what? That means that you're not prepared. Anytime that we're nervous about something or, we want to uh, just quit because of fear, that means that we're not prepared. That means that we're not prepared. But fear, I mean, it's okay. You just can't live there. You can't, be like, okay, I'm not going to do it because I'm afraid. No, you do it, you conquer it, conquer that fear, and then you keep going. And once you've done it once, guess what? you know it's possible. So then you could, you can continue to do it. So let's, one, get our plan. Two, write it down and make it plain. And three, we need to execute it. Okay? You need to execute it. Some people have gone to their graves not, executing their plan or following their dream, because someone made them doubt themselves or someone, said, well, I don't think you should do this. Well, like I said, that's people's opinion. It's neither here nor there. Thank them for that opinion, and then you keep doing what it is that you're called to do. People can't tell you what you're called to do. That's between you and and the God, and the Lord. He's the one that gave you the dream and the vision to be able to open a business or, whatever the case may be. You have to follow who you are and whose you are. Okay. And then you'll be okay. But I understand fear, I mean, having come from divorce, with twins, being downsized from a job, losing, tangible things, struggling financially, all of that played a part in it. And guess what? I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. All of the peaks and the valleys and the rough times and the, the crooked ways that were made straight, all of that was what I had to go through to be who I am now. And guess what? I'm still growing. I'm still learning. You know, life is like you're forever in school. You're forever learning something, but you have to keep your mind open to be able to learn new things. A lot of people want to be something or do something, but they're not teachable. You have to be teachable. You know, what do I mean by that? Well, you can't go into something thinking that you already know everything about it because chances are you don't. You probably know a little because if you're smart, you get your research, but you don't know everything about what it is you're trying to do. So, what we need to do is we need to be teachable. We need to be able to follow before we can lead. Yeah, you got to be able to follow before you can lead. I'm sure you guys have heard the term before, the student becomes a teacher. Okay, yeah. So if you follow and learn from, the teacher, then eventually, you'll become the teacher. So isn't that something? You'll become the teacher. So you got to follow all the steps because you can't cut corners because in learning and success, all the things you have to go through, they pile up to become one big, you know, ball of uh, ups and downs or whatever, however you want to describe it. But all of that was necessary to get you to where you're going. So don't be afraid. Don't want to quit. You got to keep going. But you have to be honest with yourself. You have to be honest with yourself. A lot of people want to do a lot of things, but is that what you're called to do? Is that what you're supposed to do? Will that make you happy? So all of those things are things that you have to consider when you're wanting to start a business, change jobs, whatever the case may be. You have to, just know what you're doing and believe in what you're doing and trust the process. That's key. Trust the process. A lot of times it looks like, oh, man, I'm not making any progress, or the money's not coming in fast enough, or, what do I do next? I don't know what to do. You know, all of that's part of the process. All of that's part of the process. But guess what? There are people who have done it before you. So you find the way that they did it, like I said, do the research, and then you follow their patterns, and then you put your own spin on it and make whatever it is yours. Do it your way. But, just do your research enough to know that somebody did it before you. And if they did it, you can do it too. You can do it too. I tell myself all the time, if Bill Gates could do it, I could do it too. So, you know, about not giving up, not quitting, knowing your worth, knowing who you are, knowing whose you are, and being strong enough not to let the naysayers deter you from where you're going. Entrepreneurs have to have a thick skin. we have to have a really thick skin, to be successful in our respective industry. We gotta have thick skin because, like I said, people are they're gonna say whatever it is they're gonna say. But it's like you said, just with a grain of salt, like your mama or your grandma used to say, take it with a grain of salt and just keep going. You know, that's what we have to do. We have to keep going. We got to climb that mountain. You can't get to the top unless you climb it. And guess what? How do you climb it? Step by step, right? Step by step until you get there. You can't stay on the same step and if you're going to get to the top. No, you got to move. You got to make things happen. You got to be active. So, um, you know, I would think about just biting off, that apple to go ahead and get started with what you want to do. Take that first bite or take that first step to do it. Because once you've taken that first step, the rest is it's like a snowball effect. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you look up one day and you like, did I do all of that? Did I achieve that? Yeah, you did. And guess what? You didn't quit. You didn't quit. You kept going. You fought through it. You know, I had a point in my life where I felt like everything was it was just over. My ex-husband was being so successful and everything was happening, for him so easily it appeared, but I don't know what he went through behind the scenes to get to where he is, but he's very successful and I'm very proud of him. And now, this is it's my turn. I'm in a position now where, I've made a lot of my dreams come true, you know. And guess what? Divorce was part of that process. It was part of that process. So, you know, God has a plan for all of us. And, we all get the same 24 hours in a day. We all get the same 365 days of the year. The question is, what are you going to do with your 365 days of the year, um, 24 hours in your day? Are you going to, you know, capitalize on it and just get as much of it as much out of it as you can, or are you going to just sit back and just let it just pass you by? Believe me, the latter is not the right choice. The latter is not the right choice. Wake up every morning with positivity, with thankfulness, you know, and then your day will just flow so good. When you wake up with a positive energy, that just resonates throughout your whole day. So don't wake up already angry at the world. That's not going to do anything but cause problems all day long. Everything's going to go wrong. But when you wake up with a positive energy and giving thanks, for just being able to wake up, everything is going to go great. So decide what you want to do and dream. Dream big. Don't be afraid to dream big. Don't be afraid to dream big. So dreams are very, very, very important. You know why they call it the American dream? Because the American dream is